Okay, here today, having some fun, working on a few stamp sketches here with some new imagery. Seeing how some of these things can come together in terms of different compositional ideas. This is called the dirt road. I think that's what I called it, dirt path or whatever. It's a kind of a lead-in design. It's one of those things that comes into the scene for compositional purposes in terms of leading the viewer's eye into a scene. This is just a rubber die on a material on my acrylic block called tack and peel. That's a tack N peel. And it's a good temporary mounting system for unmounted dies. This is an acrylic block, but this is the tack and peel. It permanently adheres to your acrylic block, but has this tacky material on it that has a temporary I wouldn't call it adhesive. It's, I don't know, whatever that tacky color form type of a material or surface to it. Okay, now this is a rock wall I'm going to use in conjunction with this road. There's a couple rock walls out there. One of them is a little bit more kind of a, I don't know, indicative of a, or like a kind of a wall you might see in a countryside, like Ireland or whatnot. Or I don't know, Midwest or back east, of kind of like a field that's been removed of, they've taken all the rocks out of a field and stacked them up into a wall. This one's a little bit more, it's a little bit of a flatter rock that can be used like that, but I see it as kind of being something to kind of reinforce, kind of a dirt embankment or something like that sort. You can use, there's a left and right side, I just did it in both ways, but they don't necessarily have to be used in conjunction with one another. You certainly could. You could put another wall on this side, kind of balancing things off, leading the viewer's eye in. Where these two images are kind of separated by some space, I'm just going to use some of my sedge filler stamp to get some texture in there. Okay, and we have this space on the right and left of my road. And I'm going to fill in some of this space here. Okay. I'm not going to do a complete finished scene here. I just want to play around with some different compositional ideas, see how these things work. This is a stone bridge image. Been wanting to get one or two of these in the line for quite some time now. I was out in Maine several years ago, and there's this these carriage paths all over Acadia National Park, and there was these really great stone walls and not stone walls, but these bridges out there, and I've always wanted to have one or two of these types of things in the line. Stamped that a little bit unbalanced, but that's fine. Again, sedge filler stamp, just kind of filling in to each side. And you notice I don't really need to mask. There's just a little bit of texture on here. If some of that additional texture gets into that, it really doesn't matter. Okay, something like that. Leading out. It's kind of real busy looking, but that's fine. Let's see. Let's add in some of these trees here. Looking for a smaller one. This is one of the new leafless pine stamps. The new series of designs aren't necessarily you know, like a new batch in terms of something thematic. These are just kind of to go in with any of the existing designs. Okay, now I'm wiping off a bit of the base of this tree right here so that when I stamp it into the grass, it looks like it's kind of going into the grass instead of just having a straight base to the trunk here, especially since this is a grassy area. So that's why I did that. Let's use it again a couple more times. I have this in 3 different sizes if someone wanted to do a really tall composition, but you know, here's the tallest one right here. There's a medium that's in between the two. So this is good if you want to do like kind of a taller scene, you know, like this, and you're just going for trees. But, you know, if you want a smaller tree, there's no reason why you can't just, you know, take something like this and just don't color the whole bottom part. You can use, you know, the top of this right here as a smaller version, okay? And you might say, well, why did you come out with a smaller version then, you know, when you can just use the larger? Well, not everyone wants a, you know, stamp this size either, so. And they are a little bit different. I mean, you could just not color in some of these branches and it'll look, you know, kind of a narrower profile like this one, but I don't know. I did it in 3 sizes. Some people want, you know, some different sizes, you know, for some extra depth in a given scene. Okay, let's see. Let's do a little bit of masking here. This is always the extent of my masking. Well, not always, but 80% of the time, okay? I want this tree to look like it's coming from, you know, the distance, you know, in back of that bridge. So here you have the repetition of imagery in there, kind of giving a little bit of continuity to the scene, you know, in terms of the repetition of that tree. It would look good with, you know, some, in addition to these leafless ones, you know, some full ones too. But I'm just, I want to play around with these new images for the most part. Sedge filler's not a new image, but you know, it's your basic filler image for kind of land elements that might have a kind of a grassy texture. The water pattern is the one that you use for the water. Okay. Okay, this is some tiny rock. That's the name of the design. Tiny rock textures to just to kind of go in here and add additional texture and to kind of weave, you know, all of these separate images together somewhat in terms of similar texture to what's going on, you know, within the that dirt road imagery. Okay, there's a little bit of grassiness, a little bit of rock texture. Well, this is just going in and adding some additional amounts of it. Okay. This would be a good scene right here, you know, to finish off in some tones and whatnot. You know, I like to leave the road a little bit lighter, okay, so that there's a little bit of a light path like that, and it would lead the viewer's eye, you know, right underneath that bridge. Let's see, this is why not? This is image is called the Old Man and Dog, I think. Called it. Oops. I need to trim off the additional perimeter rubber on some of these images, which is something I always recommend that people do. So I have a little bit of ink on the side of that. If you trim off all that stuff, then you don't have to worry about it imprinting on your scene. Okay, let's see. Let's put this... trying to figure out where to put it. Probably go up here, so... Okay. Something like that. A little bit of a lead-in. Alright, because it's kind of aiming in that direction as well. Okay, now let's see. It's a reed stamp. Let's just kind of frame things off a little bit more with some additional imagery. Adds a little bit of depth. Something like that. So you have that bridge in the background. Kind of would represent something fairly large. Maybe the smaller version would have looked even better in there. Actually, I think it would have. This is the smaller version right here. Okay. Here's the larger version. I think the smaller one, kind of background, would have given more depth to it, you know. Right here, that larger bridge would represent something much closer, but also larger in scale in terms of perspective. So, you know, fun scene. Maybe I will finish this off. Maybe I'll do it in a monochromatic or something like that, but not in this video. I think I would kind of illuminate, I would leave a little bit of light here and back in that area. So it kind of leads your eye like they're going into the light or something like that. It might be, I don't know, sunset or dusk or dawn or something like that. But, I don't know, pretty fun to work with. Let's see here. Let's play around with a couple other images here. Let's go with some of these trees here. Now, this is a really large stamp right here. I need to get a larger acrylic block with some more tack and peel. This tack and peel, by the way, is getting less tacky. I've been using it for a while, so all you have to do is just wash it off with some water and then let it air dry. Don't try to dab it off with like a paper towel or anything. It'll just build up a ton of lint on there. But when you wash these things off, it's surprisingly as tacky as the material is when it's brand new. I mean, if it's not 100%, it's probably 90% as tacky. So it's really great stuff. I knew someone that had that on their block, and their block was almost completely black from just, you know, ink and, you know, the material being used for, you know, over and over and over again. And he said that, you know, it was just as tacky as ever, and that's what really sold me on the material. Okay, this is the Mossy trunks. I'm going to have it kind of coming off the page a little bit into the page, okay? Okay. We have these images in the line called Tree Trunk Trio and Tree Trunk, but those have been, you know, some of my favorite images, some designs, you know, since the company was created, and I still use them as much as I ever did. And I just thought, okay, you know, it was just time for some new trunks. These ones kind of, I mean, you can make the, let's see, I don't have the other ones sitting here on my desk, but You can make those other ones kind of like look as though they're covered in moss or something like that. You just stamp them out and, do, greenish tinges brown to it or whatever color you want to use. But this one I felt looked a little bit more like it was covered in moss, in terms of how I addressed the base of the trunks right here and just some of these branches. These don't really represent dead trees right here, but kind of just more, forest floor type stuff where there's, more of a canopy of foliage above. But the base of it would be more of a, kind of that rainforesty type of environment with a lot of things covered in moss. Okay, now this is the two different sizes of them. One's a little bit larger, one's smaller. You can use, the same size ones, repeatedly in there. You can, if you want to, you can just color up one of these trunks if you want another one back in here in the distance or something like that too. To get the most amount of mileage out of your stamps, you kind of play around with them in terms of, editing the amount of image you stamp out so that you can use more or less of one and it won't look like the same stamp just used over and over and over again in terms of like this grouping of three. You can do that one stamp over here, or this one, you can repeat it or whatnot. Okay, this is the sedge filler stamp again. And you notice, it's airy enough where I don't have to do, mask these three trees off, so I can get like right in the middle, or I just stamp it right over the top of it. If this, outline designs you can't do that, but with tonal designs, for the most part, you can do something like that. I might not want to have this, the sedge filler stamped in the middle of this rooftop here or something like that, but you can certainly go right up to, the edges of it like that. And that's how these designs have been, conceived for masking ease, okay? This would be good with some background trees in here or something like that, but I just wanted to see how the sedge filler stamp kind of merges, the base of these trunks right here, and that works out just fine. Things when I'm designing stamps, I'm always curious about, just how much detail I can put into a texture, and ink it up, without it puddling up in the detail there. If you're using a brand new stamp pad and it's super, super juicy, or their inks are a little bit thicker, then you might worry about a little bit of the detail in here. But these days, with the engraving process being digitized and everything like that, detail is really retained without getting into so dense of an area. Because each one of these little dots is this little thing sticking up, in terms of a rubber stamp. It's this tiny little pokey piece of rubber. But with the digital world, you can really get a lot of detail in your stamp engravings. Okay, that's some imagery in here. This would be a perfect spot for some little character or a deer or something like that in the background. I can do some sky up here, or like I said, I can do some additional trees back in here. I think that would be really good. Or, maybe do some trees in the background here. Maybe do these trees again, but kind of obscure the base of them a little bit by wiping off some ink and, looking at like this forest floors and a bank of fog. That would be kind of interesting. Let's see. Let me try one of these larger rock walls here, and I just want to have it like a Ireland or something like that. I've never been to Ireland, but I've seen scenes, of course, that we've all seen. A lot of our notions of it are this area, plush green grass, very vibrant tones, with these rock walls in the middle of these fields. Okay. Let's do it down here. Now with this rock wall, I have a left and right side. Usually I want it coming from kind of off the page. I mean, there's certain things you can do. You can kind of merge the left and right, you know, together like so. But I'm going to have this kind of coming from off the page. That way I don't have to worry about this abrupt end to the wall. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's fill this up with some additional texture, grassy textures. Don't worry about kind of coming into that area. Okay, that's the texture up front, but one of the things about this grass texture, call it sedge filler, sedge filler, is that you can use it for your background as well. Okay. Something like that. It sets the wall into the terrain, like so. And you've seen me use this little reed stamp. There's a larger version of it as well. I just happen to have the smaller version on my desk right now. Okay, I'm going to use some right here in the foreground. Okay, like so. But I can use portions of it, okay, where I don't have to use the whole thing. Wherever I want some grass to be. Coming out of this field of grass, you know, some larger texture like that. It just gives it some extra texture, like so, okay? Coming in there, rather than it just being so monotonous in terms of texture, you kind of break it up a little bit like that. You can break it up additionally with some different. I was sitting there pulling this off. That's not the acrylic one. Okay, here's some of that little tiny rock, because that tiny rock, kind of little pebbly texture, is also in the design itself. So in terms of the wall, and you can just get this down here. You know, maybe you wouldn't be able to see these rocks, but you know, in that little grassy area here. But you know, who cares? It adds to the texture, I believe. Okay. This would be good, you know, with something up here too. Little character, or could be a tree or something like that. Maybe a lone oak tree, or I don't know, pine tree in the distance. It doesn't have to be Ireland, you know. In terms of what you're putting down here, just, you know, put whatever looks good. Here's this little horseback rider guy. Maybe I'll try him. This is the smaller version. Would it go in here? Yeah, I don't know. Why not? I'm going to wipe off the base of this right here, because they're the two, horse and dog, are kind of walking in grass. So if it's kind of thicker grass, you have to, you know, wipe off, you know, a certain amount of the base of the imagery accordingly, so it looks like they're in the grass. Okay. And I'll put them kind of off in the distance, like maybe where they're going over that little slope. I hope the dog is in the grass. If he's not, I'll stamp out some additional filler, sedge filler. Oh, okay, they're right there, so. I think this would be interesting to just kind of leave that as open sky up here. Maybe I'll finish these three scenes off in terms of tonally in a separate video, but just in terms of some stamp sketches, let's do something right here. I think it can use a little bit of extra texture. Okay. Some of that grass texture. Okay, so something like that. All right, so just playing around, confirming that everything blends in as planned. Okay. Play around with that bridge a little bit more. Oh, one of the things I want to do is I want to do that larger bridge in kind of a foreground and do the smaller one in the background. That was one of my ideas when making them in two different sizes. So anyway, okay, so some fun little compositions. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of sit around and just working on compositions as opposed to just working a scene from start to finish. Sometimes you can work in a composition. I don't know. It kind of engages a certain part of your brain or whatnot. And the compositions can really start to flow sometime when you're not really worrying about anything else. I don't know. We're just seeing kind of imagery in terms of incorporating it in with one another. Their sibling designs or other designs from. In my case, other companies. So I use stamps from other companies as well. Some of my favorite images to use in conjunction with the Stampscapes imagery. But when you start doing that, sometimes if you just work on some compositions for a while, like I said, I don't know, my brain starts working in a different way, in terms of seeing and thinking of different compositions, different things come to mind. And, I don't know, you can get some different compositions together and then, address them in terms of how to finish them later. And, I don't know, I wouldn't call it an assembly line kind of process, because everything's still unique in terms of the different scenes that you can come up with. But, I don't know, it can be a fun way to work as well. So in doing these, I don't know, different things are coming to mind in terms of what I want to do with these walls and things like that. On this one right here, I'm thinking some other hills going, kind of back and forth in some different ways, and maybe interspersing some trees in here, lighting things like this one right here. Like I said, I'd want to do this kind of in a foggier kind of forest floor type of thing with some additional pine trees or whatnot in the distance here, or tree trunks in the distance, and maybe having some light kind of pouring through. They call it crepuscular rays, when you get this, beams of light coming through kind of a certain, from a certain direction. Okay, so anyways, just a quick video here in terms of some compositions, and I'll be doing some more of these, I'm sure, in the future, incorporating some of the newer designs with some of the old ones. So anyways, thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed the compositions.